Part 7. My time is running out. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 61. Chen Tao was wearing a bathrobe, sitting at the head of the bed, looking forward. There was a French window in front, through which you could see the scenery outside. Looking out, you could see the water of Yuehu Lake. However, it was raining heavily outside, and the heavy rain hit the glass of the French window, making a snapping sound. It was very crisp. Chen Tao retracted his sight and looked at Ziking beside him. Ziking was lying on the bed, with her eyes closed, and had fallen asleep. A satisfied smile could be seen on her face, and her cheeks were still flushed. Looking at Ziking's expression, Chen Tao's mood gradually improved. Although leaving his familiar slum home made Chen Tao feel like he was leaving his hometown, with Ziking there, that feeling faded. Chen Tao had no relatives in the slum, and all his relatives died because time had ended. Chen Tao had always been alone. For Chen Tao, Ziking was his only relative and his beloved woman. In a sense, where she was, it was the real home. Seeing the happiness on Ziking's face, Chen Tao's mood also improved. Knock knock. There was a sudden knock at the door. Chen Tao looked at the door. Who? It's me. It was He Yuxuan's voice. Hearing this voice, Chen Tao glanced at Ziking. Ziking was sleeping soundly. Chen Tao carefully tiptoed down the bed, for fear of disturbing her. After getting off the bed, Chen Tao picked up the bathrobe on the bedside table, wrapped it up, went to the door and opened it. As soon as the door opened, Chen Tao saw He Yuxuan. Seeing He Yuxuan's clothes, Chen Tao, as a man, felt that he was tested. He Yuxuan was wrapped in a white shirt, and a black fishnet outfit under the white shirt. He Yuxuan was tall and mature, with a waist that was held. Her skin was wheat-colored, and the whole person was full of sunshine and vitality. She had a pair of slender legs, which were estimated to be about 1 meter long. With this bold outfit, it is really a test. She looked at Chen Tao, her beautiful face looked a little solemn. She looked at Chen Tao and said, "Did you kill Gao Peng? Did she get the news?" Chen Tao said, "Yes." He Yuxuan pursed her lips and said, "I should have reminded you." "What's wrong?" Chen Tao looked at He Yuxuan. He Yuxuan crossed her arms, leaned against the wall, looked at Chen Tao, and said, "Gao Peng can't be killed." "Why?" Chen Tao looked at He Yuxuan. He Yuxuan said, "There are reasons why the Black Swan dare not invade the Tal district. The most important reason is the Heaven Punishment Alliance. The Heaven Punishment Alliance is the most powerful military force in our Tal district. It has high-tech military technology comparable to the Black Swan." Chen Tao said, "Does that have anything to do with me killing Gao Peng?" He Yuxuan said, "The reason why the Heaven Punishment Alliance is called an alliance is because it is a military force born from the joint funding of many high-level enterprises in the Tal district. Among them, Gao's Group is one of the high-level enterprises that funded the Heaven Punishment Alliance. The Heaven Punishment Alliance needs to give face to the Gao's Group. At the same time, the Heaven Punishment Alliance does things based on money." She looked at Chen Tao. "If the Gao's Group pays, ask the Heaven Punishment Alliance to sanction you, and the Heaven Punishment Alliance will definitely take action against you. In other words, although there is no order like the Black Swan in this world, there are also high-tech military comparable to the Black Swan. This is the capital to compete with the Black Swan. And the Heaven Punishment Alliance does things for money, that is, it has the same nature as mercenaries. The Gao's Group funds the Heaven Punishment Alliance, that is, the Gao's Group is also one of the shareholders of the Heaven Punishment Alliance. Under such circumstances, the second in command of Gao's Group was killed, and the Heaven Punishment Alliance certainly could not stand idly by." Chen Tao frowned. "In other words, do we have to fight with an existence comparable to the Black Swan?" Of course. He Yuxuan slightly frowned, willow leaf eyebrows slowly stretched. She smiled, approached Chen Tao, hugged one of Chen Tao's arms, and pressed her whole body against him. Chen Tao could smell a fragrance. He Yuxuan slightly raised her face and looked at Chen Tao, her big eyes glowing with a hint of light, and smiled and said, "But, I think with your ability, master, you are not afraid of them at all." Chen Tao said, "Well, I have reminded you, don't you go back to sleep." He Yuxuan looked at Chen Tao, and she said, "Master, there is thunder outside, I can't sleep. Can you accompany me?" She put her arm around Chen Tao's neck. Chen Tao held He Yuxuan's hand and looked at the beautiful face in front of her. This may be He Yuxuan's purpose, knowing that Chen Tao has 30 existences with small nuclear bombs, knowing that Chen Tao cannot lose. She also came to remind him of this matter. Perhaps the reminder was just an excuse. Her purpose was to get close to Chen Tao. For a woman, who doesn't want to have an excellent man as her lover? He Yuxuan has always been very arrogant and looked down on ordinary men, but in front of Chen Tao, her arrogance was all shattered, and what was left was only her admiration for Chen Tao. She wanted to stay by his side as his woman. He Yuxuan looked at Chen Tao's face, her eyes shining. Thinking in her heart, if it's this man, I believe it's okay. Suddenly, the window on the right flashed with light. Chen Tao subconsciously turned his head and saw a burst of fire rising into the sky. Boom! Suddenly, there was a deafening roar. Hearing this sound, Chen Tao frowned slightly. The figure of number 1 came up from downstairs. She looked at Chen Tao and said, "Master, someone attacked us." As she spoke, number 1 slightly turned sideways, and her eyes glowed, and the light shot out. It fell into the void and turned into a picture. The picture was suspended in the air. Through this picture, Chen Tao could clearly see the situation outside. I saw that the gate of Yuehu Manor was broken. A group of fully armed men rushed in from outside the door. These men had a black lightning icon printed on their shoulders. "It's the people of the Tianfa Alliance." He Yuxuan's voice came from the side. Chen Tao frowned. "It's too fast, but mercenaries are of course fast." "Master, I'm no 10 at this time." Chen Tao heard this voice in his mind. Hearing this voice, Chen Tao's eyebrows stretched slightly. Can number 10 also talk to himself directly through the brain? Chen Tao said, "Number 10, what's the matter?" "Master, can these people be killed?" No 10's voice came. Chen Tao's heart moved. No wonder number 10 didn't do it directly. It turned out that she was considering whether to kill or keep them alive. Chen Tao said, "Don't do it, protect the villa, don't let them destroy the villa, it will be troublesome to repair it. Leave these people to me." "Okay," number 10 responded. Time paused. Chen Tao entered the world of code and walked downstairs. For Chen Tao, the reason why he didn't kill the people of Black Swan was that although Black Swan was hateful, it also had the ability to maintain the stability of the rich area and the slums. And most of the people in Black Swan were full of justice. Chen Tao didn't want to kill good people. But it was different in the Tal district. This is a gathering place for evil and crime. These mercenaries are also doing things for money, and there is no justice in their hearts. In this way, Chen Tao can let go and deal with them. Chen Tao also wants to try here to see how strong Xingyun is. My time is running out. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 62. The man was walking in the night holding a black rifle with the Thunder logo on it. He squatted slightly and looked ahead. When he saw no one, he said aloud, "No target found. No target found. No target found." The captain of this Heavenly Punishment Alliance action team is a tall man named Tai Hao. Tai Hao squinted his eyes and looked around. His eyes fell on the villa in front of him. He waved his hand and said, "Go forward, rush." Yes. The group of people rushed towards the villa together. Suddenly, a figure appeared out of thin air in front of everyone. The moment this person suddenly appeared, Tai Hao's pupils froze. Stop. Everyone stopped. They quickly set up a formation, a total of 13 people, with 13 guns pointed at the person who suddenly appeared. That person is Chen Tao. Crash. The heavy rain outside continued to fall. Chen Tao raised his hand and felt the rain falling on his palm. He frowned, raised his head, looked at the dark clouds in the sky, and said, "Xingyuan, stop the rain." Instructions received, codes are being eliminated. A mechanical voice sounded. The dark clouds in the sky seemed to be forcibly blown away by an invisible force. Centered on Chen Tao's head, the dark clouds dispersed. The moonlight in the sky was revealed. This strange scene was seen by people from the action team. What's going on with this cloud? It's so weird. Why did the cloud suddenly disperse? Tai Hao's face became more solemn and he said, "The person in front is our target of this operation, Chen Tao. Everyone, cover with firepower." The voice also fell. Bang bang bang. Flames emerged from the muzzle of the gun, and bullets were like raindrops, hitting Chen Tao overwhelmingly. Chen Tao raised his hand. The bullet disappeared into thin air. What's going on? Where are the bullets? What did he do? Where did the bullet go? Chen Tao opened his hand, and bullets fell from his palm one by one and landed on the ground. Pap bang. The sound of the bullet falling to the ground was very clear, and there were puddles left by the rain on the floor. When it fell, the water shimmered. Tai Hao's face darkened. At this time, a man in military uniform took out a square object and threw it towards Chen Tao. Hidden. A loud shout. Except for Chen Tao, everyone got down. Chen Tao took a look. Found that thing glowing. Bang. There was a muffled sound. Fire shot into the sky. That square thing was actually a grenade. To be precise, that thing is a high-tech product. M4 explosive bombs are more lethal than grenades. Tai Hao and others raised their faces and looked forward. Dead. It's impossible not to die after eating an M5 explosive bomb. Hearing the comments from people nearby, Tai Hao and others looked forward. The white mist slowly dispersed, revealing Chen Tao's figure. Chen Tao's clothes were on fire, but there were no wounds visible on his body. Not even a single hair was damaged. Chen Tao looked at the burning clothes on his upper body. He frowned slightly, stretched out his hand, tore off the torn top and threw it aside, revealing his upper body full of muscles. This is a monster. How is that possible? That's an M5 explosive bomb. This is a monster. Those in the action team subconsciously stepped back one by one. Chen Tao said calmly, "Isn't that what you used to blow up my door just now? It's quite powerful." Tai Hao's face also turned slightly pale. People are retreating. Monster! Monster! Tai Hao immediately understood that there was a gap between the person in front of him and the intelligence. The information Tai Hao received was that Chen Tao was just a rich man who came here from a wealthy area, but he did not expect that this man actually took an M5 explosive bomb and escaped unscathed. Bullets, and can catch bullets with bare hands. How can they deal with such a monster? Tai Hao said, "The intelligence is wrong. Withdraw. Run, that's the only way." When those people heard this, they turned around and ran away without even thinking about it. Chen Tao said, "Nebula, eliminate gravity." Accepted the order to eliminate gravity. Chen Tao felt his body slowly levitating. Because of the loss of gravity, the bodies of the group of people also floated. What's going on? How did I float? It's that man, it's him, he must have done something. The members of the action team all turned pale. Some people who were extremely frightened picked up their rifles, pointed them at Chen Tao and fired a burst of fire. Chen Tao crossed his arms over his chest and did not stop him. Bullets fell on him like raindrops. As powerful as raindrops. It will not cause any harm to Chen Tao. Monster, monster. Tai Hao's face turned pale. As the captain of the action team, he had always been calm, but now facing a monster like this that could change gravity and was not afraid of bullets and M5 bombs, even he could no longer stay calm. Die, Tai Hao yelled, pointing his gun at Chen Tao. Crazy shooting. Gunfire continued. The firelight flickered wildly in the dark night. Chen Tao said to Nebula, "Nebula, restore my gravity." Chen Tao's gravity recovered, and he fell to the ground. But the members of the 13-man action team had not recovered yet and were still floating in the air. Chen Tao said, "Isolate the space of these 13 people, change the air pressure around these 13 people, and increase the pressure by 10,000 times. Rewrite the pressure program." Writing, completed. The air pressure changed. Chen Tao watched the bodies of the 13 people begin to twist, as if an invisible force was compressing them from all directions. Ah! A scream sounded. The bodies of the 13 people were pressed into blood mist by the air pressure and disappeared into the air. Chen Tao said, "Restore all the data." The data has been restored. Chen Tao looked at the front, and the 13 people didn't even leave any equipment. Everything about them was crushed into molecules by the terrifying pressure. For Nebula, everything about everyone in this world is just a program. Including air, oxygen, wind, rain, etc. There is nothing that Nebula can't change. This is the power of Nebula. Shocking power. Chen Tao looked at his suit. He had just changed into a suit. Unfortunately, although Chen Tao's genes had been strengthened, his suit had not. The suit was ruined. Chen Tao retracted his gaze and walked towards the villa. "Let's go back first." When Chen Tao walked to the villa, he raised his head and saw He Yuxuan and Ziking standing on the balcony, looking at this side. Ziking's eyes were shining and there was a smile on her face. He Yuxuan's face was slightly flushed, her face was full of excitement, and her eyes were shining. Looking at the two women, Chen Tao retracted his gaze and went upstairs. On the second floor, Chen Tao felt the fragrant wind coming, and He Yuxuan threw herself into Chen Tao's arms. Chen Tao was slightly stunned, and he looked at He Yuxuan. He Yuxuan looked at Chen Tao with excitement on her face and said with a smile, "I was scared to death just now, I thought you were dead. I didn't expect you to be not afraid of M5 bombs. You are so powerful and strong. You are worthy of being the man I like." You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My time is running out. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 63. Chen Tao looked at He Yuxuan beside him, raised his head, and looked at Ziking. Ziking looked at him with a smile on her face. She didn't seem to care about He Yuxuan's actions. Chen Tao retracted his gaze, looked at number 1 beside him, and said, "Do you have a way to repair the gate?" Number 1 nodded slightly and said, "Yes." Chen Tao said, "Then I'll leave it to you." Number 1 nodded slightly. Chen Tao pulled his hand out of He Yuxuan's arms, stroked He Yuxuan's hair, looked at Ziking, and said, "The matter has been resolved, and it's late, go back and rest." Ziking nodded slightly. Ziking left. Chen Tao looked at He Yuxuan beside him and said, "You should go back to bed early too." He retracted his hand and left with Ziking. He Yuxuan was slightly startled, she looked at Chen Tao's back, and she smiled. He Yuxuan was not in a hurry. Chen Tao did not agree to her immediately, which made her feel a little safe. Such a devoted man is what she wants most. Chen Tao returned to the bedroom, took a shower, and changed into a bathrobe. He slept until the next morning. He was gently woken up by Ziking and ate the delicious breakfast prepared by number 3. Ziking invited Chen Tao to take a walk over to Yuehu Lake to see the scenery over there. Uehu Lake is a large lake with clear water. There are ancient buildings by the lake. Standing on the sandalwood paved road, looking at the clear Uehu Lake next to it, it feels good. There is also an open grassland by the lake. Ziking took Chen Tao's hand and walked to the front of the grassland. You stand here, Ziking said to Chen Tao. Chen Tao looked at Ziking. Ziking stood on the grass. She took off her shoes and stepped on it barefoot. The grass by the lake is artificial turf, and it is now clean after being washed by the rain last night. She stepped on it with her bare feet, but she was not afraid of getting dirty or hurt. Ziking looked at Chen Tao and said, I want to dance for you. Chen Tao smiled and said, yes. She was wearing a cotton close-fitting tank top, which fit her body. When she held her waist, her upper body was bulging. She wore tight jeans, outlining her long legs that were 1 meter long. She had a mature and charming figure. After hearing what Chen Tao said, Ziking smiled and raised her hand to untie the hair tie on her hair. Her slightly curly hair naturally fell behind her. She threw the hair tie aside. Looking at Ziking's preparation, Chen Tao called Black Lightning over. The black car slowly stopped not far away. Then the explosive car music sounded from the car. Hearing this sound, Ziking followed and danced. She was serious, looking at Chen Tao with big eyes, and her mature and perfect posture brought others some shocking visual enjoyment as she danced. Her hair fluttered, and her beautiful face was expressionless, giving people a different kind of charm. Everyone has different fields. Perhaps dance is Ziking's field. In this field, her every move is full of confidence. Looking at Chen Tao, she showed a faint smile while dancing, looking extremely charming. Ziking came to Chen Tao with the rhythm of the music, holding Chen Tao's hand, circling Chen Tao, twisting her mature figure while circling Chen Rao. Close to Chen Tao, she took the initiative to kiss Chen Tao. Lips parted. Ziking smiled, took 3 steps back, and continued to show her charm in her dance. A piece of music ended. Ziking's dance slowly stopped. Chen Tao clapped his hands. Pa 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 applause sounded. Chen Tao smiled and said, it's beautiful. Ziking smiled, from now on, my dance will only be shown to you alone. Chen Tao smiled, okay. Ziking's eyes were full of joy. Ring, ring, ring. Chen Tao's cell phone rang. Hearing the ringing of the cell phone, Chen Tao was slightly startled. He took out his cell phone and took a look. It was an unfamiliar number. Who could be calling? Chen Tao answered the phone and put it to his ear. Hello. Chen Tao. This is Wu Yao. There is an emergency. Wu Yao's voice was nervous. Run away now. Don't stay in Yuehu Manor anymore. Hearing this, Chen Tao frowned and said, why? Wu Yao said, I just got the news that the Tianfa Alliance has sent 2 D6 fighters to Yuehu Manor. They want to bomb Yuehu Manor. The D6 fighter is equipped with the most advanced missiles of the Tianfa Alliance. If it bombs, the entire Yuehu Manor will become ruins in a few seconds. Wu Yao's voice was nervous. She said, I want to stop it, but I can't. Now you can only leave Yuehu Manor quickly, otherwise it will be too late. Chen Tao frowned. D6 fighter? Bombing. It seems that the Tianfa Alliance did not give up the action because of the loss of a team last night. They chose a more terrifying method to deal with Chen Tao. Wu Yao said hurriedly, hurry up, the speed of the D6 fighter can be close to the speed of sound. It will be too late if you hesitate. At the same time as Wu Yao's voice fell. Shua. A strange sound came. Chen Tao raised his head and saw that there were 2 fighters flying towards the side from not far away in the sky. Seeing this, Chen Tao narrowed his eyes slightly. This fighter is very close to the side. With Chen Tao's eyesight, he can see the mark on the fighter. It is a mark of lightning. Chen Tao narrowed his eyes. It's really fast. Wu Yao on the other side of the phone also heard the movement here. What? Wu Yao's voice was a little panicked. Chen Tao said, nothing, then I will go to prepare here first, thank you. He hung up the phone. Chen Tao rarely said thank you to people, but this time he really had to thank Wu Yao. Although the speed of the D6 fighter made this intelligence not very useful, no matter what, Wu Yao also risked being targeted by the Tianfa alliance to give Chen Tao a hint. This favor is worthy of Chen Tao's thank you. Hu. Chen Tao saw that the position for loading missiles directly below the D6 fighter opened, and 2 missiles fell directly and shot in the direction of Chen Tao. Looking at the missiles in front of him, time was paused in an instant. The whole world turned into code. Chen Tao looked at the 2 missiles that were suspended in the air, and the fighter jets that turned into codes in the sky. Chen Tao slowly clenched his fists, and the veins on his fists bulged. Heaven Punishment Alliance. If Chen Tao did not have these abilities, facing the bombing of the D6 fighter jets, everyone in Yuehu Manor would surely die. The Heaven Punishment Alliance was determined to kill Chen Tao. Chen Tao calmed down his anger and looked at the 2 missiles in the sky. Nebula, change the target and orbit of the missile, aim the orbit at the opponent's fighter jet, and change the target to their fighter jet. A mechanical voice sounded, received the order, reprogram the missile, and it is being written. My time is running out. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 64. Under Chen Tao's gaze, part of the missile-shaped code was erased by Nebula, and then a new code was written. The missile target has been changed to an enemy fighter jet. The missile trajectory is being rewritten. It is being written. A mechanical voice sounded. The code is changing. The code for the missile shape was originally facing Chen Tao. At this time, the shape of the code was turned upside down, with its head facing the direction of the fighter jet. Completed. Chen Tao exited the inner world mode. Time to recover. The 2 missiles flew back. The pilots of the 2 fighter jets didn't seem to understand what was going on. Boom. 2 loud bangs. The 2 fighter jets burst into flames. Boom. Boom. Along with the loud noise, the fire shot straight into the sky. The fighter jet was blown into pieces by its own missiles and scattered in the air. That fighter jet, how did it blow itself up? A voice came from beside him. Chen Tao was slightly startled. He came back to his senses and looked at Zicheng beside him. Chen Tao raised his hand, gently put his arm around Zicheng's shoulders, gently touched her arm, and said, well, ignore them. It's almost noon now, let's go back and have lunch. Zicheng hummed. Black lightning came to Chen Tao's side and the car door opened. Chen Tao looked at Zicheng and said, I still have something to deal with. You go have lunch first. After I solve it, I will go and accompany you. Although Zicheng was confused, she nodded. Under Chen Tao's arrangement, she got on Black Lightning. The car door closes. Chen Tao said to Black Lightning, turn on the autopilot mode and go home. Black Lightning's car lights turned on and drove away automatically. Chen Tao looked at the clear moon lake in front of him and said, Xingyun, do you have the data on the 2 fighter jets just now? Yes, a mechanical voice sounded. Hearing this, Chen Tao said, can that kind of fighter jet be changed into an unmanned fighter jet? Can. Chen Tao said, build 2 D6 unmanned fighter jets and send them to the headquarters of the Heavenly Punishment Alliance to give them a gift in return. Received the order and started writing the D6 unmanned fighter jet. Under preparation. Several blue lights appeared in front of Chen Tao. Blue light fluttered, and slowly, the figure of a fighter jet appeared in front of Chen Tao. Not long after, 2 huge fighter jets appeared on the wide grassland. Moon Lake Manor is very large, and of course it is more than enough for these 2 fighter jets. The headquarters of the Heavenly Punishment Alliance has been detected. It has an air defense system and a missile interception system. To this end, I added a stealth system to the D6 unmanned fighter jet and enhanced the missile's anti-interception capability. Nebula's mechanical voice sounded. The takeoff method used by the D6 fighter jet requires it to glide 300 meters before taking off. I upgraded the material of the fighter jet to Z2 material, which can use the magnetism of the Earth and the planet to take off. Chen Tao said, "Okay, how do I control them to go to the Heavenly Punishment Alliance?" "I have added advanced intelligence into the fighter jet. As long as you give it orders, it can complete the task perfectly." A mechanical voice sounded in Chen Tao's mind. Hearing this voice, Chen Tao understood. This drone actually uses a robot-like program. In other words, this is a fighter-type robot. Chen Tao walked up to the two fighter jets. He looked at the one on the right and said, "Your name is No 31. He looked at the other one and said, "Just call it No 32. The lights on both fighter jets came on at the same time. "Yes, Master." Two mechanical sounds came. Chen Tao said, "Your first mission is to go to the Heavenly Punishment Alliance and give them my return gift. I want you to go to the headquarters of the Heavenly Punishment Alliance and conduct bombings. After the missile bombing is completed, you can return. On the way back, when the time comes, remember to send them a message and tell them that this is my return gift." Chen Tao. "Receive. Receive." Two mechanical sounds sounded, which were electronic sounds coming from the speakers. The speakers seemed to be their sound generators. Chen Tao didn't think much and said, "Let's go." The two fighter jets floated into the air, and flames came out of the exhaust holes at their tails. "Call out." There was a sound that broke through the air. The two fighter jets tore through the air, flew past, and took to the sky. The wind howled. The clothes on Chen Tao's body made noise. Chen Tao crossed his arms and watched the fighter jet leave. Chen Tao thought for a moment, took out his cell phone and dialed Wu Yao's cell phone number. "Hello. Chen Tao, thank God, you're okay." When Wu Yao heard Chen Tao's voice, she was obviously relieved. Hearing this, Chen Tao fell silent for a moment. Chen Tao doesn't think his relationship with Wu Yao has reached this level. Wu Yao said, "As long as it's okay, you called me to tell me that you're okay, right?" Chen Tao said, "Well, it also means that, but there is another meaning." "Where are you now?" Wu Yao said softly, "I'm in the Taer building, in the auction house." "That's good. Don't get close to the headquarters of the Heavenly Punishment Alliance now. I'm going to give the Heavenly Punishment Alliance some gifts in return," Chen Tao said. "Return gift?" Wu Yao was a little surprised. Chen Tao said, "Well, you will know it later, so let's do it." Chen Tao hung up the phone. Chen Tao put away his phone, looked at the direction where the fighter jet left, and retracted his sight. "It's time to go back to the villa." A black shadow flew in front of him, slowly stopped in front of Chen Tao, and the car door opened. Chen Tao got in the car. Black lightning carried Chen Tao back to the villa. Arrived in the villa. Boom. Suddenly, a muffled sound came from a distance. Hearing this sound, Chen Tao looked back at the source of the sound. In the distance, the fire illuminated half of the sky. Boom boom. The whole ground was shaking slightly. Wu Yao, who was sitting in the office, also heard the movement. She looked at the water cup on her desk, and the water on the water cup was shaking. Boom. Wu Yao raised her face. Bang bang bang. The window was shaking, hitting the wall and making strange noises. Wu Yao's heart condensed. She hurriedly got up and walked to the window. Through the window, she could see the red clouds. Wu Yao's eyes trembled slightly. She knew very well that the direction was the direction of the Heavenly Punishment Alliance. Wu Yao thought of what Chen Tao said, and wanted to send it back to the Heaven Punishment Alliance. Is that a return gift? Above the Heaven Punishment Alliance headquarters, two D6 fighters were hovering in the air. Missiles fell from the fighters one after another and landed above the Heaven Punishment Alliance headquarters. As soon as the missiles fell. Boom. The fire was bright. The entire Heaven Punishment Alliance headquarters turned into a sea of fire. There were constant screams, but these screams were soon drowned out by the sound of missile explosions. The entire Heaven Punishment Alliance headquarters seemed to have become purgatory at this moment. There was only crying and fear here. My time is running out. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 65. What's going on? What's going on? The underground shelter of the Heavenly Punishment Alliance. As the leader of the Heavenly Punishment Alliance, Yu Xing sat at a temporary desk. He frowned and asked the woman in black clothing standing in front of him. Yu Xing said, "Why were we bombed by D6 fighter jets?" Boom. The entire shelter trembled. Yu Xing looked ugly and said, "Where is our investigation system? Why didn't we find it?" The woman said, "Those two D6 fighter jets seemed to have some anti-reconnaissance capabilities. When they arrived, our reconnaissance system had no response." Yu Xing frowned tightly. He looked at the woman and said, "Then where did our interceptor missiles go when they can be seen with the naked eye?" Hearing this, the woman said, "They seem to be equipped with high-tech jamming systems. Our interceptor missiles cannot locate the missiles they launch." Yu Xing's face darkened, and he said, "You mean, our Heavenly Punishment Alliance?" As the Heavenly Punishment Alliance with the world's top military technology. In terms of technology, we were crushed by the opponent. The headquarters of our Heavenly Punishment Alliance become a target under the opponent's eyes. The woman nodded slightly. The current situation seems to be like this. Yu Xing clenched his fist suddenly and said, "Who sent those two fighter jets? Black Swan? Has their technology reached this level without us knowing it?" The woman said, "Probably not. According to our monitoring of Black Swan, we have not heard that Black Swan has sent out D6 fighter jets. If there is a D6 fighter jet lifting, we will know it. If it's not Black Swan, then who is it?" Yu Xing frowned. "People of the Heavenly Punishment Alliance, listen, this bombing is a warning from my master Chen Tao," a mechanical voice sounded from the loudspeaker. That huge voice enveloped the entire Heavenly Punishment Alliance. Hear this sound. Yu Xing's face became extremely ugly. Chen Tao. Of course Yu Xing knows this name. Not long ago, he ordered to use D6 fighter jets to bomb the Yuehu manor where Chen Tao lived, in order to kill Chen Tao. The information obtained by Yu Xing from investigating Chen Tao was that Chen Tao was just an ordinary person who had to flee to the Tal district after being chased by the Black Swan. After that, he personally sent a small team to directly kill Chen Tao. But the team was all killed. Although he didn't know why, Yu Xing didn't take Chen Tao seriously. He was thinking of directly using military force to blow up the Moon Lake Manor where Chen Tao was located. But Yu Xing never expected that Chen Tao actually owned a D6 fighter jet, and even the military technology he possessed could completely crush him. Yu Xing's face looked uncomfortable, his hands clenched into fists, and veins popped up on the back of his hands. The Gao group, these bastards, provoked such a terrifying existence. They even dragged us into the water. The entire Heavenly Punishment Alliance has suffered heavy losses, all because of Chen Tao. Yu Xing slapped his hand on the table. The table shook violently. Seeing the change in Yu Xing's demeanor, the woman's face did not change at all. She said calmly, "The entire Heavenly Punishment Alliance headquarters on the surface has been moved and all kinds of military equipment have been destroyed. In this bombing, we also lost a lot of military science and technology research talent. If Black Swan knew about this, they would probably not miss this great opportunity. It's possible that the Black Swan will invade the Tal district again," the woman said slowly. Yu Xing's face turned gloomy and he said nothing. The next day. "Did you see it yesterday?" "Of course I saw it. The fire was so scary." "Is that the power of a bomber?" "It doesn't look like it to me. Looking at the plane, it should be a D6 fighter jet. A fighter jet? But the bomb load is too exaggerated. The entire Heavenly Punishment Alliance headquarters was turned into a sea of flames. Yes, what I saw with my own eyes was the D6 fighter jet. Wait a minute, did you just say D6 fighter? Isn't that a fighter from the Heavenly Punishment Alliance? Could it be that there is some rebellion? No, no, those two D6 fighter jets are owned by a man named Chen Tao. It is said that they were used to give the Heaven Punishment Alliance a warning. Chen Tao, who is this person? He can actually use D6 fighter jets to bomb the headquarters of the Heaven Punishment Alliance. This is the place with the highest defense of the Heaven Punishment Alliance. Even the most high-tech G9 fighter jet of Black Swan cannot get close to the headquarters of the Heaven Punishment Alliance. Who is this person called Chen Tao? Suddenly, the entire Tal district began to talk about the bombing of the Heavenly Punishment Alliance. The name Chen Tao has also become popular in the Tal district. Many people want to know the identity of this man. Some of the people with better intelligence recognized Chen Tao, who was the one who bought the Moon Lake Manor at the Tair auction house. If you are interested, please post this information on the website. Chen Tao suddenly became a celebrity in Tal district, and at the same time, the gate of Chen Tao's Yuehu Manor was crowded with people. Master, there are many people gathered outside, saying they are reporters. They want to interview the master. Number 1 said to Chen Tao, who was sitting on the sofa. Chen Tao frowned and said, no. The gift you gave to the Heavenly Punishment Alliance yesterday made you a celebrity in the Tal district. Wu Yao looked at Chen Tao with a smile on his face. Chen Tao said, this is not the result I want. He did not expect that yesterday's actions would produce such a reaction. His purpose was just to make the Heavenly Punishment Alliance fear him. Wu Yao said, after the Heavenly Punishment Alliance has experienced such a heavy blow, I probably don't dare to take any further action against you. She looked at Chen Tao and said, it's just that if you do this, you will be forged with Liang Zi of the Heavenly Punishment Alliance. Chen Tao said, if I don't do this, they are already planning to bomb my home. This knot has already been formed. If they are smart, they should not mess with me again. Hearing this, Wu Yao smiled and said, yeah, I think so. After saying that, she sat next to Chen Tao. She moved closer. Chen Tao could smell the fragrance of Wu Yao. He glanced at Wu Yao and said, it's you, what are you doing here? This woman came to see him early in the morning, because Wu Yao had helped Chen Tao before, and she was considered a friend to Chen Tao. So I let her in. But after she came in, she didn't explain her purpose. Wu Yao smiled, Wuxi Group is also very interested in you and knows that I have a better relationship with you. The top management of Wuxi Group asked me to build a good relationship with you. High level. Chen Tao looked at Wu Yao and said, your father is the chairman of the Wuxi Group, and you are the daughter of the Wuxi Group. The senior executive, does he mean yourself? Wu Yao was startled. She pursed her lower lip and said with a smile, you actually found out. That's right, it's me. I'm the top executive of the Wuxi Group. So, I ask myself to have a good relationship with you. She came closer to Chen Tao and looked at Chen Tao with her big eyes. The admiration and love in her eyes were ready to come out. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My time is running out. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 66. Wu Yao is too close. Chen Tao could smell the faint fragrance on her body. She was still so beautiful at such a close distance. Wu Yao slowly looked back. Sitting on the sofa, leaning against the sofa, she looked at the robot standing next to her that looked exactly like herself. She stretched her eyebrows slightly and said, these artificial people look exactly like me. When you look at them every day, do you think I am by your side every day? Wu Yao looked at Chen Tao and said with a smile, will you get used to me being by your side without knowing it? Chen Tao was silent. Miss Wu He Yuxuan next to her suddenly said. Wu Yao was slightly startled and looked at He Yuxuan. He Yuxuan smiled and said, Miss Wu, do you like Chen Tao? Hearing this, Wu Yao blushed rarely and glanced at Chen Tao subconsciously. Chen Tao was wearing a bathrobe, sitting on the sofa, watching TV, and seemed not to care about the sounds here. Wu Yao looked at He Yuxuan and said with a smile, of course, girls like excellent men. Of course I like excellent men like Chen Tao. The channel on TV is currently broadcasting news about the Heavenly Punishment Alliance, and the main ones are talking about Chen Tao. Chen Tao looked a little irritable. He was about to change the channel when he heard Wu Yao's voice next to him. He held the remote control's hand and paused for a moment. He Yuxuan said with a smile, that may disappoint Miss Wu. Chen Tao is very devoted to Zi Cheng. Wu Yao pursed her thin lips. She looked at Chen Tao and said, I know, but I can wait. When he is willing to accept me, I will go with him. Anyway, I have a lot of time and I am not in a hurry. He Yuxuan smiled. She looked at Chen Tao and said nothing. Chen Tao was sitting on the sofa, with a pair of eyes on the left and a pair of eyes on the right. He felt a little strange. Chen Tao had no choice but to put the remote control on the table and said, I'll go for a walk. He Yuxuan and Wu Yao were startled. I'll go too. Wu Yao stood up. He Yuxuan said, I want to follow you too. Chen Tao was slightly startled, looked at the two women, and said, I want to go for a walk alone, so don't follow me. With that said, he returned to the bedroom. Returning to the bedroom, Chen Tao saw Zi Cheng lying on the bed taking a nap. He looked away, changed his clothes, and went out. When he came to the door, Chen Tao saw a group of people standing guard outside the door, either reporters or people who came to watch the fun. Time pauses. Everything around you becomes a code pattern. Chen Tao took advantage of the time pause and went out. Left in the black lightning. Although the scenery in Yuehu Manor is good, the two girls are pestering Chen Tao too much. Chen Tao needs to come out for some air. Driving around in the car, Chen Tao came to the park and planned to take a walk to get some fresh air. Walking in the park, the environment in the park has a sense of familiarity. After all, Chen Tao and Zi Cheng have been to this park before. There is a lake on the left and green trees on the right. The environment here is quite good. Suddenly, Chen Tao's gaze paused for a moment, and he noticed a bench for people to rest. There was someone on the bench, and he was an acquaintance. Li Xiaolu. Looking at this girl, Chen Tao couldn't help but stop. Chen Tao had rescued Li Xiaolu before, but yesterday Chen Tao killed her Li Xiaolu's only relative, Gao Peng, who was Li Xiaolu's adoptive father. For Chen Tao really didn't know how to face this girl. Li Xiaolu was sitting on the bench. She was looking ahead, in a daze, not knowing what she was thinking. Chen Tao hesitated for a moment, but still walked over. No matter what attitude she would take when facing Chen Tao could only accept it. After all, everything has been done. Li Xiaolu heard Chen Tao's footsteps, and she turned her face to look at Chen Tao. When she saw Chen Tao, her eyes glowed with luster. She didn't speak, but just looked at Chen Tao quietly. Chen Tao stopped and looked at Li Xiaolu. Eyes facing each other. Neither of them spoke. Li Xiaolu pursed her thin lips, looked away, and said nothing. Chen Tao pondered for a moment, then sat down on the bench next to her and said, "Sorry." Li Xiaolu shook his head and said, "There is nothing to be sorry for. He may be my adoptive father, but he is not in my memory. He is dead, and I don't feel anything at all. You apologize to me, there is no need of." Chen Tao was slightly startled. He remembered, but Li Xiaolu's memory was gone. He thought that after Li Xiaolu met Gao Peng, she could retrieve her memories with Gao Peng, but now it seems that this is not the case. Chen Tao said, "What are you doing here now? My foster father died and everyone in my family left. I didn't know what I should do, and I came back here unknowingly." Li Xiaolu said, "No one told me who I could go to. I don't know who I can go to." Chen Tao looked at Li Xiaolu. Li Xiaolu lowered his head, his expression showing decline. Looking at Li Xiaolu's expression, Chen Tao was silent for a moment and said, "If you don't mind, come and stay at my house, okay?" Chen Tao apologizes to Li Xiaolu. It was necessary to kill Gao Peng, but Li Xiaolu was innocent. Chen Tao wanted to compensate Li Xiaolu. Li Xiaolu raised her face and looked at Chen Tao, "Is that okay?" Hearing this, Chen Tao smiled and said, "Of course." Li Xiaolu pursed her lips and hesitated a little. She said, "I think it's still not possible. No matter what, my godfather was killed by you. What a contradiction." Chen Tao looked at Li Xiaolu's hesitation and stood up. Li Xiaolu was slightly startled. She looked at Chen Tao who was approaching. "What are you doing?" Chen Tao held Li Xiaolu horizontally in his arms. Li Xiaolu was startled. Her fair face turned red. Her big eyes looked at Chen Tao nervously. "What do you want to do?" Chen Tao smiled at Li Xiaolu. "Xingyun, give me a pair of wings." Received the instruction and is being written. Compiled. A pair of white wings appeared behind Chen Tao, and he spread his wings. He held Li Xiaolu and flew into the sky. Li Xiaolu felt that she was getting higher and higher from the ground. Her face turned pale and she hurriedly hugged Chen Tao's neck. She was a little nervous. "Don't do this, put me down. It's so high, too high." Now the two have flown to the clouds. This made Li Xiaolu very uneasy. Chen Tao said leisurely, "It's my idea to let you live in my house. You can't disagree. From now on, you are a member of my family." Li Xiaolu was startled, and she looked at Chen Tao. Is this man so domineering? Chen Tao had to be domineering and let Li Xiaolu continue to be conflicted. Later, he could only leave Li Xiaolu outside. It was very difficult for her to live alone outside. And this is the Tal district, and she could have something wrong at any time. Chen Tao felt sorry for Li Xiaolu, and he wanted to make it up to her, and this domineering attitude was most suitable for her. Chen Tao flapped his wings and flew towards Yuehu Manor. Li Xiaolu hugged Chen Tao's neck nervously. She looked around, and suddenly she noticed the white wings behind Chen Tao. Her eyes were shining. "Hey!" Suddenly, a voice came. Chen Tao looked down at Li Xiaolu. Li Xiaolu looked at Chen Tao with her big eyes. She asked softly, "Are you an angel?" My time is running out. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 67. Wings, Angel. Chen Tao looked back at the white wings behind him. Unlike those of robots, these are real wings, not made of metal, but pure flesh and blood. For Xingyun, humans are also a kind of program, machines are programs, and flesh and blood are also programs. Wings with flesh and blood are of course also a kind of program. But Chen Tao didn't expect that the wings given to him by Xingyun would be misunderstood by Li Xiaolu. She actually regarded Chen Tao as an angel in mythology. An angel of justice? It's probably because of age. Li Xiaolu is still young, and there has never been a human with wings in this world. Only angels in mythology can grow wings. So, she misunderstood. Chen Tao hummed and said, "Yes, I am an angel." Li Xiaolu was startled. She raised her face and looked at Chen Tao. Under her narrow eyelashes, her big eyes were shining with a hint of light. Chen Tao said, "Gao Peng is an evil existence. As an angel, I must destroy him. This is my duty. But you are innocent. I want to protect you. Can I?" He looked at Li Xiaolu seriously and said. "If a white lie can help her, why should she be stingy with a white lie?" Li Xiaolu pursed her lips. She looked at Chen Tao and said, "You are an angel, I believe you. Chen Tao smiled slightly and retracted his sight. Yuehu Manor is in front. Chen Tao slowly descended. Wow, what is that? Suddenly, Chen Tao heard a cry of surprise. Hearing this sound, Chen Tao looked down and saw the people surrounding the gate. Some of those people were holding cameras, and they were facing Chen Tao one by one, taking pictures crazily. It can fly, with wings. White wings, is that an angel? The angel in the legend. Oh my god, it turns out that Chen Tao is this kind of person. It turns out that angels really exist. No wonder Chen Tao can defeat the Heaven Punishment Alliance. That is the real Heaven Punishment. Hearing the heated discussion below, Chen Tao retracted his gaze, too lazy to think too much, and carried Li Xiaolu into Yuehu Manor. Flying to the door of the villa, Chen Tao landed, folded his wings, and put Li Xiaolu down. Li Xiaolu stood up. Master number 5 was standing at the door. Seeing Chen Tao coming back, she came up to greet him. Seeing this, Chen Tao said, "This is Li Xiaolu, Miss Li, please help her choose a bedroom so that she can have a good rest." Number 5 heard it, she looked at Li Xiaolu, showed a friendly smile, and said, "Miss Li, please follow me." Li Xiaolu heard it, she looked at Chen Tao. Chen Tao said, "Go ahead." Li Xiaolu nodded slightly, then followed number 5 and entered the villa together. Watching the backs of the two people leaving, Chen Tao watched Li Xiaolu enter the villa. Chen Tao looked at the pair of wings behind him. Just now, he had a sudden idea to bring Li Xiaolu back in the form of flying, so he asked Xingyun to get him a pair of wings. But Chen Tao suddenly found, this thing is a bit inconvenient. The wings are folded, but the wings are still behind. This gave Chen Tao a headache. Chen Tao said to Xingyun, "Xingyun, change the program of the wings. I want a pair of wings that can disappear and appear according to my wishes." Xingyun said, "I suggest that you usually carry the wings in another form on your body, and restore them to the form of wings when needed." Although Chen Tao didn't quite understand what Xingyun meant by another form, Xingyun, as a top-level intelligence, is trustworthy. Therefore, Chen Tao was too lazy to ask more questions and said, "Okay." Received the instruction, reprogram the wings. Writing completed. Suddenly, the wings on Chen Tao's body turned into white light spots. The light spots flew from the back to Chen Tao's fingers like a bridge built by white light. Chen Tao raised his fingers and looked at the condensation of white light. After a while, a small ring appeared on Chen Tao's finger. Seeing this, Chen Tao understood. What Xingyun said about converting into another form means this. The wings left Chen Tao's body and turned into rings. In other words, as long as Chen Tao needs to use it, can the ring be converted back into wings? Thinking of this, Chen Tao wanted to give it a try. Chen Tao's thoughts moved. The ring in his hand lit up slightly. The rings all turned into white light, which condensed behind Chen Tao and turned into a pair of pure white wings. The wings spread out. Seeing this, Chen Tao's eyebrows slightly stretched out. Wings. Chen Tao was startled. He looked towards the source of the sound. Wu Yao and He Yuxuan were standing there with shining eyes. Wu Yao hurried over here. Wu Yao was very interested in high-tech things. Although the wings were made of flesh and blood, Chen Tao didn't know whether it was high-tech or not, but Chen Tao saw from Wu Yao's shining eyes that she was also very interested in the wings. Seeing Wu Yao coming over here, Chen Tao didn't want to be treated as a monkey. With a thought, the wings turned into white light, condensed on Chen Tao's fingers, and turned into a ring. Chen Tao put his hand in his trouser pocket and hid the ring. Wu Yao was slightly startled. She looked at Chen Tao and said, "Where are the wings? I want to see them." Chen Tao said, "There's nothing to see, just a special means of transportation." Transportation, Wu Yao's eyes lit up, is it really a high-tech product? Chen Tao's mouth twitched. He felt like he had stepped on a minefield. Chen Tao retracted his gaze and walked into the house. Wu Yao followed Chen Tao and said, "Brother Chen Tao, let me see it." She was acting like a spoiled child. Wu Yao, this beautiful girl, acted like a spoiled child with Chen Tao in a coquettish tone. Most people probably couldn't resist it. Fortunately, Chen Tao was not an ordinary person. If a girl was soft-hearted when she acted like a spoiled child, Chen Tao, who lived in a slum, would have been swallowed up by someone long ago. Chen Tao ignored Wu Yao and sat on the sofa by himself, picked up the remote control and turned on the TV. Wu Yao sat next to Chen Tao. She sat seriously, staring at Chen Tao with her big eyes. Chen Tao was watching TV, and Wu Yao was watching Chen Tao. Being stared at, even by a beautiful woman, is not so pleasant. Very embarrassing. Master. Chen Tao raised his head and looked at number 1. Number 1 said respectfully, "Just now, number 10 sent a message saying that there are 2 people outside who claim to be from the Heaven Punishment Alliance, and they want to see you." Heaven Punishment Alliance. Chen Tao frowned. Yesterday, Chen Tao sent 2 fighters to bomb the headquarters of the Heaven Punishment Alliance, and today the Heaven Punishment Alliance sent people to find him. What does it mean? Revenge? No, if it is revenge, shouldn't it be done directly? Wu Yao frowned slightly. She didn't seem to figure it out. She looked at Chen Tao and said, "What should I do?" Chen Tao looked at number 1 and said, "Let them in. My time is running out." Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 68. Although he didn't know what the people from the Heavenly Punishment Alliance wanted to do, Chen Tao wasn't afraid of what they would do. Number 1 nodded slightly and said, "Okay." "Wait a minute," Wu Yao said quickly. "Tao, this is not good." Wu Yao looked at Chen Tao and said, "If the people who come in carry dangerous things like small nuclear bombs in their bodies, it will be very dangerous if they get close to you." Hearing this, Chen Tao looked at number 1 and said, "Let number 10 scan them to see if there is anything dangerous on them." Number 1 nodded slightly. She stood there and did nothing. After a while, number 1 looked at Chen Tao and said, "They have guns on them. Apart from the guns, there is nothing else." Chen Tao said, "Let number 10 put away their guns first, and then let them in." Although Chen Tao is not afraid of bullets, the 2 little women around Chen Tao can't stand it. "Still put the gun away." Number 1 said, "Okay. Then I'll take shelter in the inner room first." He Yuxuan stood up and said with a smile. Chen Tao nodded slightly. He Yuxuan is just a small owner of a clothing store. It is not easy for her to offend the Heavenly Punishment Alliance. Wu Yao also stood up and said, "I'll go too." Wu Yao has a special status. The Wuxi Group is one of the sponsors of the Heaven Punishment Alliance. If the Heaven Punishment Alliance sees it, Wu Yao's position will be very embarrassing. Although the artificial man looks the same as Wu Yao, he is different from the artificial man who only has the same appearance. It can be explained that Wu Yao sold the artificial man to Chen Tao. It is estimated that the Heavenly Punishment Alliance has also investigated this matter. But if I am often with Chen Tao, the situation will be different. The 2 women left together. As soon as they left, Chen Tao felt much more relaxed. From a certain perspective, being liked by a beautiful woman is not an easy thing. Facing them, Chen Tao was more willing to face the missile attack of the Heavenly Punishment Alliance. It didn't take long. There was a knock on the door. "Dong dong, Master, I am number 10, I have been brought here." Number 1 walked over and opened the door. Number 10 led someone into the living room. Chen Tao looked at the 2 people. Looking at it this way, Chen Tao discovered that the leader was actually a woman. The woman was wearing a black outfit that covered her astonishingly mature figure, with a slender waist and an astonishing bust. Looking down, the legs tightened by black leather pants are slender and straight, and paired with a pair of black cylindrical high-heeled boots, they make the woman look very tall. Her hair was tied up naturally, exposing her white neck. The eyes under the long and narrow eyelashes are quite lively. Overall, she is definitely a beauty, but her face is expressionless and indifferent. Belongs to the iceberg beauty section. Behind the woman is a muscular man. The man is also wearing a strong suit and looks very strong, just like a bear. The woman looked at Chen Tao and said, "Please allow me to introduce myself. I am Lan Ruliu, the military adjutant of the Heavenly Punishment Alliance. This is my bodyguard Zhao Gang." Chen Tao picked up the remote control, turned off the TV, and then said, "Everyone who comes is a guest, take a seat." Number 1 moved a sofa and placed it opposite Chen Tao. Lan Ruliu nodded slightly, walked over and sat on the sofa opposite Chen Tao. Zhao Gang stood behind Lan Ruliu, looking wary. Number 1 held tea and placed it in front of Lan Ruliu. Lan Ruliu looked at number 1 beside her. She withdrew her gaze and looked at Chen Tao. She said, "I came here to acquire Mr. Chen's military technology. The fighter jets sent by Mr. Chen yesterday have anti-reconnaissance and anti-interception capabilities. Missile technology and technological capabilities have far exceeded the level of modern technology. To this end, we plan to purchase those two technologies from Mr. Chen. No matter how much time it takes, we are willing to do so." 1 second Chen Tao was confused as to what these two people were doing, but the next second she made their purpose clear. But this purpose made Chen Tao feel inexplicably irritable. Chen Tao said, "You really dare to say that yesterday you sent fighter jets to bomb my Yuehu manor? Today you actually want to buy technology from me? Did your brains get blown out yesterday or something? You actually think that I will sell it to you as a you enemies?" Lan Ruliu's face did not change at all. She said, "Yesterday, the fighter jets we sent failed to successfully bomb the Moon Lake Manor and were destroyed. And didn't you already give us a gift in return? The entire Heaven Punishment Alliance headquarters, everything turned into a sea of fire, we suffered nearly 3,000 casualties, and all kinds of military equipment were destroyed." She looked at Chen Tao and said seriously, "Don't you think this price is enough for Mr. Chen?" Chen Tao looked at Lan Ruliu and said calmly, "The reason why you paid such a price is because your technology is weak. If we say that the weak person is me, then yesterday, Yuehu Manor ceased to exist, and my beloved woman will also be killed by your missiles. Yesterday's bombing was my warning to your Heavenly Punishment Alliance, but it does not mean that we are even after that bombing." Chen Tao looked at Lan Ruliu and said, "In my opinion, you are still they are potential enemies who may attack me at any time. As for you, you should be grateful if I don't kill you all, instead of thinking of being equal to me. You want to buy technology from me?" Chen Tao crossed his arms, leaned against the back of the sofa, and said, "I think your Tianfa alliance is getting stupider and stupider." Lan Ruliu was not angry because of Chen Tao's words. She looked at Chen Tao quietly and listened to him. After hearing what Chen Tao said, Lan Ruliu said, "Early this morning, we got the news that Black Swan has started to act." When Chen Tao heard it, he looked at Lan Ruliu. Lan Ruliu said, "The reason why Black Swan did not attack the Tal district is because we have the Tianfa alliance in the Tal district. But after yesterday's round of bombing, our headquarters lost a large number of talents and various core military equipment. Black Swan got the news and started preparing for the next wave of military operations to invade the Tal district today. At present, without your help, I think it will be difficult for the Tianfa alliance alone to resist Black Swan." Lan Ruliu looked at Chen Tao, "I think you and Black Swan are also enemies, right? If Black Swan occupies the Tal district, you should know what will happen to you, right?" Chen Tao frowned slightly. Chain reaction. This is the chain reaction after bombing the Heaven Punishment Alliance. The Heaven Punishment Alliance is the chain that restricts the Black Swan, and this chain was destroyed by Chen Tao, which is equivalent to giving the Black Swan an opportunity. Chen Tao looked at Lan Ruliu and said lightly, "No matter what, I can't have any transactions and cooperation with the Heaven Punishment Alliance. Lan Rulio looked into Chen Tao's eyes. She pondered for a moment, slowly stood up, and said, I know, sorry, I disturbed you. She turned and left. Number 10 followed the two and sent them away. Chen Tao retracted his gaze at Lan Rulio's back. Black Swan, is it going to invade the Tal district? For the Black Swan, the Tal district itself is a wrong existence. It is inevitable that they will think about taking back the Tal district. What happened to the Heaven Punishment Alliance is indeed a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the Black Swan. However, Chen Tao had a headache. He didn't want to face the Black Swan. But if the Tal district was taken away by the Black Swan, he would be hunted down by the Black Swan again. He doesn't want to give up his comfortable life now. What should he do? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My time is running out. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 69. After thinking about it, Chen Tao had no clue. After all, he was just an ordinary person. He couldn't think too much about a matter like the one in front of him that already involved a military war, and he didn't want to care too much. Chen Tao simply didn't think about it anymore. The boat will naturally straighten out when it reaches the bridge. There will always be a way. Number 1 came over and moved the sofa in front of Chen Tao aside. Chen Tao picked up the remote control and turned on the TV screen. Have they left? Chen Tao had just been watching TV for a while. Before he could find a program he liked to watch, he heard a voice coming from beside him. Chen Tao turned his head and saw that He Yuxuan and Wu Yao had come out of the back room. He Yuxuan looked around and saw no one else. She felt relieved and walked towards Chen Tao. I just heard them say that the Black Swan is coming to invade the Tal district. Wu Yao sat on the sofa next to Chen Tao. She looked at Chen Tao and said, what are you going to do? Chen Tao glanced at Wu Yao. He crossed his arms and said, just do whatever you want to do. The me now is not the me before. Black Swan and the Heaven Punishment Alliance will follow me whether they are alive or dead, it doesn't matter. As long as they don't mess with me, I won't get involved. The Chen Tao now is not the Chen Tao before. Chen Tao didn't understand Nebula's ability before, so he was madly pursued by Black Swan. His only ability to resist was to escape. But now, if he encounters a Black Swan again, Chen Tao is confident that he can make the Black Swan feel his terror. Hearing this, Wu Yao pursed her lower lip. She looked at Chen Tao, but didn't know what to say. Chen Tao felt Wu Yao's emotions and looked at Wu Yao. Wu Yao looked at the TV screen and didn't know what she was thinking. He Yuxuan said, well, that's good. Maybe because of the war, the clothing store I have run for many years will be destroyed. But as long as I can stay by your side, I think there will be no problem with me. She looked at Chen Tao with a smile on her face. Hearing this, Chen Tao's heart moved. He glanced at Wu Yao. Chen Tao understood. Chen Tao is confident in protecting Yuehu Manor from war, but what about others? Wu Yao is different from He Yuxuan. He Yuxuan has one person. As long as she lives with Chen Tao, it doesn't matter to her. But Wu Yao has relatives, and she also has a Wuxi group. The arrival of the war will inevitably affect the development of the Wuxi group, and her relatives are also likely to die in the war. Wu Yao wanted Chen Tao to help, but Wu Yao didn't want to embarrass Chen Tao, so he showed such an attitude. For Chen Tao, Wu Yao can be regarded as a friend. The phone call she made at that critical moment yesterday was enough to be considered Chen Tao's friend. Regarding his friend, Chen Tao felt that he had to help her, but it was absolutely impossible for Chen Tao to cooperate with the Heavenly Punishment Alliance. Chen Tao said, Wu Yao. When Wu Yao heard this, she looked at Chen Tao. Chen Tao said, if you want, you can bring your family to live with me. Wu Yao's eyes lit up slightly, and there was surprise on her face. Is it okay? Hearing this, Chen Tao nodded slightly, yes. Wu Yao smiled and said, thank you. Chen Tao withdrew his gaze, looked forward, and said, there is no need to say thank you between friends. Wu Yao approached Chen Tao and kissed Chen Tao's face. Chen Tao was slightly startled, and turned back to look at Wu Yao. Wu Yao stood up and said, I'm going back first. I have to tell my family the news. Hearing this, Chen Tao nodded slightly, looked at number 1 and said, send Wu Yao back. Number 1 nodded slightly, okay. Number 1 looked at Wu Yao and said with a smile, Miss Wu, let's go. Being invited by an artificial person who looked exactly like herself, Wu Yao felt strange in her heart. Wu Yao looked at Chen Tao, Tao, I have a heartfelt request. Chen Tao looked at Wu Yao and said, what? Wu Yao said, can I borrow your robots? I want to show them to my father. Chen Tao remembered what He Yuxuan had said before, that Wu Yao's grandfather, Wu Tianhai, was a scientist who studied artificial humans, but he failed to develop them. For Wu Yao's family, the existence of these robots number 1 is very special. It is normal for her to want to show the robot to her family. Chen Tao said, on the first, go home with Wu Yao. Number 1 nodded slightly and said, okay. Wu Yao's eyes lit up slightly, she smiled and said, thank you. Her eyes were full of gratitude. Chen Tao said, go. Yeah, Wu Yao and number 1 left together. Looking at the backs of the two people until they left, Chen Tao withdrew his gaze. Tao. A voice came from beside me. Chen Tao looked at He Yuxuan. He Yuxuan said, Wu Yao and I hid in your bedroom, and I saw Zi Ching, something didn't seem right with her. Not quite right? Chen Tao said, what do you mean? He Yuxuan said, she doesn't look well. I feel like she is sick. Get ill? Chen Tao frowned, stood up, and walked to the second floor. He went upstairs to the bedroom and opened the bedroom door. He came to the edge of the bed and looked at Zi Ching. Zi Ching's face was pale, her eyebrows were furrowed, and she was curled up on the bed. Seeing this, Chen Tao's expression changed slightly. He sat beside Ziking, holding her hand, and said, Ziking, what's wrong? Ziking heard Chen Tao's voice, she slowly opened her eyes, looked at Chen Tao, she forced a smile, and said, it's okay, I'm fine. It's okay. Chen Tao frowned, and his peripheral vision inadvertently noticed the time on Ziking's wrist. At a glance, Chen Tao felt that the hairs on his body stood up, his face changed slightly, and he hurriedly picked up her wrist to take a look. The time on the wrist was passing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The time on a normal person's wrist will change with the passage of time. But the time on Ziking's wrist is now decreasing rapidly at an alarming rate. Originally, there are only 30 days left in a year. There is only one possibility in this situation. Ziking is sick, and this disease has threatened her life. Ziking has always liked to sleep. She said before that she has the habit of taking a nap. Chen Tao thought she was really too tired, so she always wanted to rest. Now it seems that she is not too tired, but that she is already ill. Time passed faster and faster as he looked at Ziking's wrist. Chen Tao frowned, he looked at Ziking and said, what's going on? Ziking's eyes were filled with disappointment. Seeing that Ziking was unwilling to speak, Chen Tao slowly suppressed his emotions, he stroked Ziking's hair, kissed her cheek slowly, and said, no matter what, I will not let you die. Ziking's eyes were shining, she looked at Chen Tao. Dear, I'm sorry, I kept it from you for so long. The doctor told me that there is currently no treatment for my disease, and I may die at any time and anywhere. I wanted to tell you, but, I was so scared that you would dislike me. I never dared to say it. I love you very much, I'm sorry for letting you fall in love with me, and letting you watch me die in front of you. My time is running out. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 70. Die. Chen Tao looked at Zi Ching's pale face and the tears in her eyes. Chen Tao gritted his teeth. He looked at Zi Ching and said firmly, I said, I will never let you die. Time pauses. Everything becomes code patterns. Including Zi Ching. Looking at Zi Ching, who turned into data code. Chen Tao's heart was a little confused. If Zi Ching dies, what will he have left? As a member of the slums, Chen Tao's relatives are basically all dead, and he has no blood relatives. Now Zi Ching is his only relative. If she died too, perhaps his existence would be meaningless in this world. Chen Tao clenched his fist. Xingyun, check Ziking's condition, Chen Tao said. No matter what, Zi Ching cannot die. Instruction received, testing. Detection completed. What disease does she have? Chen Tao asked. A mechanical voice sounded, she has a genetic disease called Carroll's disease, which is a genetic disease caused by a genetic defect. On the surface, this genetic disease only causes drowsiness, but after a certain age, the disease can cause severe pain and eventually death. Chen Tao frowned. Can it be treated? Carroll's disease is a genetic defect. The only way to cure it is to reshape the gene, Nebula said. Chen Tao said, what does it mean to recast genes? Xingyun said, the whole body's genes were destroyed and recast to retain the memory of the database. In other words, it can be saved, but the body needs to be replaced. Chen Tao closed his eyes. Let's do it. Received the order and began to clear the original genetic code. Clearing. Chen Tao slowly opened his eyes. He watched the code on Zi Ching in his arms disappear at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chen Tao slowly clenched his hands. The code disappears, leaving only a few tiny strands of code in the brain. Looking at this scene, Chen Tao felt unprecedentedly panicked. Almost all the codes on her body have disappeared. Even if she is genetically reshaped now, will she still be the original Zi Ching? The clearing is complete and new genes begin to be rewritten. New code, surrounding the small remaining code, begins to reshape. Not long after, the code returned to human form. The genes are programmed. It's done. Chen Tao exited the code mode. Time flows again. Chen Tao looked at Zi Ching in front of him. Zi Ching had her eyes closed. Chen Tao put Zi Ching back on the bed and looked at her figure. Her figure hasn't changed, everything looks the same as before. The only difference is. Chen Tao looked at Zi Ching's wrist. The time number on Zi Ching's wrist had disappeared, and what remained was a symbol. Infinity. Zi Ching now has infinite time and lifespan just like him. But is she still who she is now? Chen Tao looked at Zi Ching's face and gently touched her cheek. Suddenly, Zi Ching's eyelashes moved. Seeing this, Chen Tao's heart froze. He was a little nervous. Zi Ching is about to wake up, but the question is she still her? Zi Ching's eyes slowly opened, revealing those familiar eyes. She looked at Chen Tao and said, Dear, am I not dead? She looked at herself, her eyes filled with confusion. Hearing this familiar voice, her familiar demeanor, Chen Tao relaxed, it was her. Chen Tao smiled, stroked her cheek with his hand, came close to her face, and kissed her. Parted lips. Chen Tao looked at Zi Ching's steamy eyes and said with a smile, I said, I will never let you die. Even if the god of death wants to take away your life, I will take you away from the god of death. Return. Zi Ching slowly sat up, stretched out her hands, hugged Chen Tao's neck, and rested her little head on Chen Tao's shoulder. Chen Tao was slightly startled, then he calmed down and gently stroked her hair with his hand. I was just so scared. I wasn't afraid that I would die, but I was so afraid that I wouldn't be able to see you again after I died. Chen Tao smiled, okay, It's okay. He looked at Zicheng's face, and there were tears on her little face. Chen Tao gently wiped away the tears from the corners of her eyes. Zicheng came out of Chen Tao's arms. She looked at her body. She blushed. She quickly pulled the sheet next to her and hid her body under the sheet. Seeing this, Chen Tao smiled, "Are you still so shy? I've seen everything." Zicheng gave Chen Tao a roll of her eyes and blushed, "Okay, you go out first, and I'll change clothes." Hearing this, Chen Tao smiled, approached Zicheng, held her chin with his hand, and kissed her. Parted lips. Zicheng's eyes glowed with a hint of splendor. Chen Tao said with a smile, "Then I'll go out first." Yeah, Zicheng nodded slightly. Chen Tao got up and left. Zicheng looked at Chen Tao's back and watched Chen Tao leave. She got out of bed and walked to the closet. Picking out a set of clothes from the closet, she noticed something from the corner of her eye and looked at her wrist. She raised her wrist and looked at the infinity mark on her wrist, her eyes glowing. "What's this?" Other side. Chen Tao went out. As soon as he went out, he saw He Yuxuan waiting at the door. He Yuxuan looked at Chen Tao's relaxed demeanor and realized that the situation was fine. She smiled and said, "It seems that the situation is fine." Chen Tao said, "Yes, it's okay." He Yuxuan nodded slightly, "That's good." Dear, suddenly, Ziking's voice rang in the room. Hearing this voice, Chen Tao was slightly startled. He turned around and reopened the door and entered the room. In the room, Ziking was wearing a white shirt and standing by the closet. She looked at Chen Tao and said, "Dear." Chen Tao walked to Ziking and said softly, "What's wrong?" Ziking raised her hand and showed Chen Tao the infinite mark on her wrist. She looked at Chen Tao and said, "My time has become like this." Chen Tao was slightly startled and looked at Ziking. Ziking's eyes were filled with a hint of uneasiness and confusion. Obviously, Ziking didn't know what this meant. She was a little uneasy. After all, Chen Tao didn't explain it to her clearly, and she didn't know what happened to her. Chen Tao had to explain it well. Chen Tao picked up Ziking horizontally. Ziking lay obediently in Chen Tao's arms, letting Chen Tao hold her without struggling. Chen Tao held Ziking, came to the bed, and put her on the bed. Chen Tao lay down, lying beside her, hugging her gently, holding her wrist, looking at the mark on her wrist. He looked at Ziking, and said, "The time on our wrist represents our lifespan. The more time, the longer life." Ziking hummed, "I know this." Chen Tao nodded slightly, and he said, "Then do you know how this time will be displayed when we have infinite lifespan?" Ziking's eyes condensed slightly, and she said, "You mean, I have infinite lifespan now?"